Hey everybody, welcome to Monday Night Live in Lexington. My name is Kathryn Kauffman and I'm a psychic medium here in Lexington, Kentucky. Welcome to my every Monday night show. This is where we discover what and who we are in this journey called life. I think there might be an elf delivery at my door. I hear a knock. Oh,
Good evening. I am Santa's
helper.
Santa's bartender.
Bartender?
Boo Boo Baby Toy Joy. And I bring her a Boo Ridley.
Boo Ridley.
2 ounces of bourbon, 3/4 of an ounce of chinar, and a 1/2 ounce of cherry herring. I have added, of my own accord, 4 dashes of orange bitters.
I didn't know elves were bartenders.
Elves do many things.
Well, I thank you, Sir Elf.
Have a good evening.
I bid you farewell and thank you for the drink. It's quite festive. Oh, me. Oh, well, let's give it a taste, shall we? Before we get started. Yes, the cherry herring. Delicious. Let's go to the comments. And let me flip over to Facebook, give it a refresh. We got a lot of stuff to cover tonight, y'all. Let's see. For some reason, it's not, Facebook keeps limiting my reach by changing it back to friends only and not public. What about that? Okay. Hey to Janice. Good to see you tonight. Ina, Dana, Amber. Thank you. I didn't style it down because we're doing Christmas ghost stories. And I thought, okay, I need a little bit of a Victorian look here for the Christmas ghost story. So I put my hair up. So there you go. This is your Victorian look for the evening. A couple of housekeeping things we got to go over. A special shout out to Charles Biggs and Dana Likens Fleener, Janice. Absolutely. I'm so happy that you guys are interested in Christmas ghost stories. Remember, there's not going to be a show for the 25th because I'm going to be celebrating my birthday. It's going to be my happy birthday. We're going to be back on January the 1st with a whole series on alien communication and other alien type of topics. I also want to talk about the sponsor of the show is my Patreon page. I absolutely love my Patreons every single day. I get to put a post up for them that shows them the moon influence for the day. Let's say the day is in Scorpio and people maybe are going to have a tendency to fight and argue. These are things you need to know about, right? For $3 a month, you can get daily forecasts that show you the tendencies and the energies of the day. I also put like a psychic impression on it so that I can tell you what my impressions are for the day. Hey to Joe Bruce. And Ida says, lucky you with your own personal elf. I am lucky. I realize that. I am well aware of that. I love it, though. And a big shout out to Mick McGillicuddy. Happy early birthday. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. So January 1st, we're going to come back with a bunch of alien programs. Back to the Patreon. Let me show you a little video that tells you about the kind of the there's 3 tiers of support. The first tier is the $3 a month. It's that dang elf-made cocktail. And everybody gets that. All 3 tiers get the daily influences. The tier 2 gets the daily influences and online teaching. So you get access to all the teaching PDFs that I have downloaded on Patreon. The tier 3, those are my VIP Patreons. They get the daily influence, access to the online PDFs, plus They get once a month a live stream hangout where they get to ask me any psychic question that they want, including mediumship. So, just saying, let's show the video. So if you want to join, just after the show, do a rewind and point your QR scanner at the QR code at the end of the video, and you can hop on over and join. Okay, so here's another bit of housekeeping. There are new cards for Fun Friday. I just got them today. I'm so excited. I was going to wait till after the first of the year to use these. I'll show them to Instagram over here. But I can't. I opened them up and they were so cool that I'm going to use these this Friday. Can't wait. We've been in need of some new cards for a while. And like last Friday, I was like, oh, all these cards are driving me crazy because we've used them so many times. But I didn't know that these were on the way this quick. And you can kind of see some of the images there a little bit. These are more like history, folklore, animal type of cards, which I love, absolutely love. I can't wait to use these. So they're coming this Friday, guys. Let's see what else we got. Okay, that's all our housekeeping. Let's go into the history of our Christmas ghost stories, and then I'm going to jump right into it with a few breaks for my Boo Boo Bear cocktail. All right, the history, and I'm having to read off a little cue cards because, as you can see, I made the room kind of blue, and then the Christmas lights are in the background over here. I made the room kind of blue so that it would be a little bit spooky and ghost-like, but that makes it harder for me to read stuff. So, you know, in the winter, it's dark. The days are shorter. We're cold. It's quieter. And because the days are shorter, they used to spend more time around the fire. And it's sort of like, you remember we used to tell ghost stories around the campfire in the summer, like at summer camp. And so back in the olden days, they would tell ghost stories at Christmas because it's the shortest days of the year before the winter solstice. And we're all huddled around, you know, the fireplace or something warm. And it's a nice thing to do, to tell ghost stories. It's kind of exciting, but at the same time, you know, we're kind of preoccupied with the people that in our lives that aren't there anymore, and kind of telling ghost stories and reminiscing about paranormal things sort of remind us that our loved ones are still there and these things are possible, and it kind of makes us feel good. Plus, in the olden days, these were verbal traditions, and you didn't necessarily have to read and write to be able to tell a ghost story. It was something that was passed down verbally. But in Victorian England, it started becoming kind of vogue as people put their ghost stories into writing. And so what they would do is they would have the books of the different writings, and they would leave them on the table for other people to see as a kind of a prestige type of thing. Hey to Melissa Begley, good to see you tonight. So it was considered kind of an in-style thing to do, to have those ghost story books on your coffee table. Hey to Linda, good to see you tonight. I was just looking on Facebook to see if we have any questions. So I'm going to go back to the page where we have this blue mysterious light. So let's just jump into some ghost stories. Now, I have to read them to you. And I had told you guys that I wanted to find a book that had Kentucky ghost stories, and I found one, and it's a really good book. And this is, let me get it correct, Haunted Houses and Family Ghosts of Kentucky, and it's by William Linwood Montel. And I got off Amazon. It's a really good book. I've read through it, and I picked out a few really good ones, and I will call out the title of the story and what county this comes from. So I tried to get a few counties here and there. But first, a sip from Boo Boo Bear. And I hope you guys have got an imbibement going too, because ghost stories are so much better when you have a little bit of something yummy. All right. This story is The Ghost That Left No Tracks in the Snow. And this was procured from Laurel County. A lady says she once stayed all night at the house of a woman who had lost her husband by death under suspicious circumstances shortly before. While they were all seated around the fire, someone was heard approaching the house and coming up on the porch. At this time, there was a terrific snowstorm raging outside of the door. As soon as the visitor came on the porch, there was a great noise, as if someone were stamping the snow from their feet. And then, whoever it was, opened the front door, went through the hall, and clumped loudly up the stairs. From where two ladies sat around the fire, they could not see who entered the house, becoming alarmed when no one came back down the stairs. And not knowing who it was, they mustered enough strength and courage up to take the lamp and go upstairs to see. A thorough search of the upstairs rooms failed to find the intruder. No snow tracks were on the stairs to be seen. Finally, on trying to open the outside door, they found it to be locked. And it had been the whole time. Unlocking the door, the frightened women examined the snow in the yard for tracks. None were found. So it must have been a ghost. I think that's pretty good. It's a short story, but it's pretty good. Okay, this one is titled, Was It Really a Ghostly Coffin? And this comes from Greene County. The story I'm about to tell happened in June 1930, about a half mile outside the Greensburg city limits. One morning during that year, my dad, J.W. Moore, who was sheriff of Greene County, got to his office about 7:30 a.m. I was the deputy. When we got there was an entire family by the name of Rogers waiting for him outside of the courthouse. This family was in a state of agitation and excitement. Dad said that they were literally scared out of their wits. Here's the story that they told that morning. They'd gotten up about the usual time in the morning, and they were preparing breakfast. They lived in this rather large old frame house. All of a sudden, they heard a noise out in the hallway and presumed that some neighbors were just coming into the house. The Rogers family sat and waited a few minutes for whoever it was to come through the door and knock. The noise just continued on, and out in the hall, suddenly the kitchen door flung open. This happened just a little after daybreak, so it still wasn't very light outside. Anyway, the kitchen door flung open, and coming through the kitchen door from out in the hallway were these 4 tall men dressed in black. They were carrying a coffin on their shoulders, and on top of the coffin was a white lamb. The Rogers family told Dad that they had quit eating breakfast when they saw the men and the coffin and left in a hurry to come to town. That was an actual understatement on their part, for later evidence indicated that they actually ran all the way to town after seeing this thing. There was no evidence that they had tried to talk with these men that had the coffin. They simply scattered and left the house and ran to Greensburg. When the family members were questioned, they all told the exact same story. There was no question but that this family had all seen something and probably saw the exact same thing. What they wanted the sheriff and his deputies, Patterson, Adkins, and me, to do was to go out to the house and investigate. Well, we drove out to the house. To get to it, you had to drive up a long lane through a farm with large trees on either side and up a long lane through the farm, and the old house stood at the top of the hill. It was surrounded by very large trees. It was an older home that had been there for many, many, many years. It was a 2-story frame structure, and it was not in too good of condition. The porch, both upstairs and down, had lattice work and vines that had grown up around the house and just completely covered the lattice, and also had obscured a lot of the doors and windows. Actually, the old house looked like the kind of house that you would find a ghost in. Of course, I don't believe in ghosts, even though there's some things that have occurred that just can't be explained at any rate. The 4 of us went into the house and began a search of it room by room. We were looking for any evidence of anything that might have taken place at this old house. We went into the kitchen first, and what we found were plates on the table with half-eaten meal, half a cup of coffee, a skillet on the stove with some meat and eggs in it that were burned because the skillet had just been left where it was when the family members saw these men carrying the coffin. Then we began to look through each room of the house to satisfy our own curiosity and to reassure the people that there wasn't anything there. I don't know how many people have ever looked for a ghost, but even though you don't believe in ghosts, there's something that's just a little bit exciting about going into an old house where just a few hours before somebody has seen or claimed that they've seen a ghost. I expected to find nothing, nor did the others as we looked. But in one of the stairways that went to the upper part of the house, a closet had been built under the stairway, and the closet had various pieces of clothing that had been hung in it. The closet had a spool on the outside it was fashioned for a door handle, and I used it in an effort to open the closet. The closet door would just move a little bit, but not a great deal. It would move out at the bottom about an inch, and I'd pull on it. When I do that, the spool or the door would pull back. Finally, I got kind of upset, and I jerked that spool. The door flew open, and something white flew out of that closet and fell right over the top of my head. But when it happened, I literally was scared really bad, but as it turned out, the white thing was just a sheet that Mrs. Rogers had hung in the closet. But boy, did it scare me. It didn't take me long to get over that, but for a minute. I thought the ghost had me for sure. We continued through the house. By the time we got through and we were ready to leave, there was some 15 or 20 people from Greensburg who had come to see what was going on. Greensburg is a small town, and you know how ghost stories or word of ghosts gets around in a hurry, and everybody wants to see it before it gets away. We went back to the sheriff's office, and it wasn't long until we got a call from the owner of the house stating that there was just a lot of people driving across the fields and going into the house, and this was getting to be a nuisance. He asked us to go back out there and check things out again about the possibility of ghosts and to tell the people that there just wasn't a ghost there. So we made another trip out there, but the people kept coming out there all day and all night. I guess that altogether, close to 1,000 people showed up. We kept getting calls from the owner asking us to go out there and run these people off. Finally, the deputies, Patterson, Adkins, and myself, got into a car to go back out to the house. But that trip still didn't stop people from going out there. This old house stands on what is known as Marshall Ridge Road. What the Rogers family saw, I don't know. However, they were personally convinced that they saw ghosts of these 4 men carrying this casket with this white lamb on top of it. This ghost has never been seen before and has never been seen since. Whether or not it is an effort on somebody's part to scare these people so that they would never leave the old house, thus making the place available for sale at a much cheaper price, I don't know. Maybe no one will ever know, but the Rogers family were convinced that they saw what they saw. He tells us they were so scared. They did move away eventually, and the house remained vacant for many years afterwards. It would be interesting to know if that house still exists, or if the property is still there, or if there's something else on the property. I would just love to know. Hey to Wendy Martin, and a shout out to Prestonsburg. Hey to Paula over here on Instagram. Good to see you. Let me check for questions or comments on Facebook. That cocktail is really good. And it's just going to make the ghost stories even better. Okay, let's go on to the next one. This one is called Spirits, Spooks, and Ghostly Pool Players, and it comes from Allen County. Sheila Marr of Scottsville remembers one night, it was like yesterday, although this story is recounted 30 years later. She was about 5 years old, and Ma saw something she believes was a spirit in the family's North 8th Street home. It took the image of her grandmother and then her father. I've always known it took place, but now I cannot actually say it was a ghost or human being or just something unexplainable. I've never been able to put it into words, she says. It's something I'll find out later when I've passed on from this world, maybe. Mar had just said goodnight to her grandmother, who promised to be up shortly to her room to tuck her in. The little girl had just put her hand on the banister when she looked up. Her grandmother stood at the top of the stairs. I froze for just a few seconds, she says. I looked back in the living room where my grandmother was still sitting, then back to the top of the stairs where my grandmother was standing, then back to the living room again, then back to the top of the stairs where my grandmother seemed to be motioning for me to come to her. I yelled for my grandmother, who was in the living room, and she came immediately. We both looked to the top of the stairs, and the other grandmother was not there. Mar's grandmother told her that she was very sleepy and tired and must have imagined it. But Mar says It was very vivid, and it will never leave me. I could not see all the way through it, but it would put you in mind of a mist, a very thick mist. The most predominant feature was the eyes. They had an almost iridescent quality. Her grandmother tried to comfort her and put her to bed with her Raggedy Ann that she'd had since birth. Mar says that she lay there with her eyes wide open, not sleepy at all, with the street light coming in through the window and the night light in her room. Her father, David Calvert, was standing beside her bed, or so she thought. I lifted my arms and said, "Daddy, take me," Mar said. He raised his arms to waist level with palms upward, looked down at her briefly, and then faced forward. He walked through me, through the bed, and out through the wall, Mar recalls. She was again so upset. She went to the downstairs, leaving her Raggedy Ann sitting on about the 4th step from the bottom. She went to her parents' bedroom, and her mother told her it must have been a really bad dream. As they started back upstairs, the Raggedy Ann was gone. Then about 2 weeks later, her mother found Raggedy Ann, but in an unfinished upstairs room in an old cabinet. A month or so after that, a neighbor joined the family for dinner. Then came the sound of a rack of pool table balls being broken and scattered around the table, but this was happening upstairs, followed by the sound of a ball falling into the ball return and hitting another ball. They all at the table heard the sounds. David Calvert, the father, got his pistol, and he and the neighbor went carefully up the stairs into the room. Nothing was out of place. Calvert went on to say that he had heard the pool playing a couple of times after that. Calvert says that one previous owner, O.B. Toe Jr., told him that something came from down the steps and he swung a baseball bat, but the bat went right through the figure, which proceeded to the downstairs bedroom and out of the back of the house. According to Calvert, previous owner Fount Hunt said his wife, Lucille, woke him up one night because it sounded like someone was beating on the house. He had got his gun and went outside but couldn't find anyone, yet he could still hear the beating on the house. 12 years ago, not too long after Philip Calvert and his wife Elaine moved into the house that was built in 1810 by Theophilus Reed, they had a board and they did a kind of a play party. It was a foursome, and they were using the Ouija board to see what had happened. The board spelled, "Get me out." They were on the back patio but could see straight through the windows and doors of the front porch. David and Elaine saw a figure that had on an overcoat and a hat go across the front porch. David Calvert says another time he thought he saw a woman wearing a high-neck garment from the 1800s in an upstairs window over the front door. And when he asked his brother, "Who is that?" the brother said that no one else is around. "I don't know what you're talking about." Philip Calvert still sees at least twice a month a white misty figure that looks like a person wearing a long white gown go from the cemetery that is on the farm to the nearby creek every night about 10:30 or 11:30. and you can still hear someone walking up and down the stairs, two of which creak, he says. Philip says that even if there are spirits around, as long as they don't bother him, he doesn't mind. Very interesting. All right, we've got one last story that's really good. Let me get to it. And I'm going to take a Boo Bear drink break, and then I'll check for comments or questions. Man, is that good. All right, let me have a little peek at Facebook to make sure. And each time I go to Facebook, I have to refresh the page so that it will show me any comments. So I think we're okay. All right, this is a story that's titled One Stormy Night, and this comes from Pike County. It was on a dark, stormy night that there was a knock at the door of this country doctor's house. He was very sleepy, but he came downstairs and answered the call. It was a small girl who was very scared. She said that she had come to find a doctor because her mother was very ill and might die. The little girl had on a wool coat, a furry hat and mittens. She also had on little black boots. It was storming really bad, and the doctor was amazed at how brave she was. He said that he would be right down. He ran upstairs, got dressed, grabbed his medical bag. Off they went into the night. They walked and stumbled through the storm, and finally they came to a little cottage. They went inside, and the doctor went into the bedroom. The woman was almost perished from pneumonia. He bathed her in alcohol to get her fever down. And little side note, this is something that as a nurse I did in the early days. I don't think that they teach this to nurses these days. It's only the older nurses that know that. But if you put alcohol and a little ice and a little salt in a bath, and you take a wash rag and dip it in there and dab it on the skin, let it evaporate, that will bring the body temperature down. So, like I said, I don't know if they teach that to nurses now, but that was a technique that we used in the 90s. I've been giving my age away, in the 90s, to bring the fever down. Anyway, so he was doing this. He was bathing her in alcohol to get her fever down, and he gave her some medicine. He stayed with her for a long time until finally she began to show some signs that she was improving, and the crisis was almost over. He was then wondering, where's the little girl gone? So he remarked to her mother, "That little girl of yours sure is brave. Not many little girls would come out in a storm like this." He then noticed that the woman was acting very strangely. She said to him, "Doctor, I have no little girl. She died 3 months ago from the pneumonia, like I have." The doctor was shocked. He couldn't believe this. He said, "But she came after me. I remember everything that she wore. She had on a wool coat, her boots, the furry hats, her mittens. I remember everything. She led me here." The lady looked very sad and then said, "When she died 3 months ago, we put all of her things in the closet." He rushed to the closet to look. He flung the door open. Sure enough, there were the very clothes that the little girl had on. Suddenly, though, as he looked a little closer at the clothing, he could see that the clothing was wet from the ice and snowstorm. that they had trudged through. That is such a good story. Hey, Mitzi, good to see you tonight. We're going to do one other story. And this is from my husband's place that he's from, Knott County. So this one's for David. And it's called Nat Husband and a Spirit. Nat Hudson and a Spirit. This is coming from Knott County. My brother Nat was always a rowdy boy. He always carried a pistol, which he called his sweetheart. He was always looking for a fight or anything that would cause trouble. He was better known as Bad Nat Hudson. One reason for this was because every time you saw him, he had this little pistol, his sweetheart, at his side. Nat also had a horse named Maggie. She would do anything that he asked her to do. He had her so well trained that he never had to get off of her to open the gate. When he was drunk, he would just say, "Come on, Maggie, I'm drunk, and too drunk to open the gate. You know how to get me on the other side." Maggie would take one leap, and over she would go. Seems as you could hear her say, "Stick on, partner, here we go." We always knew when we saw them coming if Nat was drunk or not the way the mare Nat was drunk or not the way the mare would act. She would come to the gate and just sail over it and never wait for it to be open. In 1920, I had an older sister, Emazelle, who lay lying on her deathbed. To her, there was not any of us who were as dear as Nat. While laying there dying, Emazelle called Nat to her bedside and asked him to give up his rowdy ways and to be a good boy and quit his drinking and lay down his sweetheart. He saw that she was going fast, so he said, "Sis, I promise, I promise." Not long after her talk with Nat, she died. He laid down his pistol and quit drinking for about 2 months. Then he started drinking again and picked up his sweetheart. The first day he started hunting for trouble, he got drunk and started back home riding Maggie. He had his gun and his box of shells along. When he got about 3 miles from home, he heard somebody singing. At first, he thought the singing was from far off, but it began getting closer and closer. At last, it sounded as if it was under Maggie's belly. He began to sing himself to try to drown out the voice, but it didn't work. The louder he sang, the louder it sang. Then he listened to the words of the song, and he said, "Sis, oh sis, this is for you, for I have heard you sing this song so many times." She was singing the drunkard's hell. The horse even acted like it heard her singing and tried to get Nat off of it. Nat gave Maggie the spur, and the faster she got, the louder the voice sounded. So Nat took out his pistol, the sweetheart, and shot all of his shells trying to drown out the singing, but the voice got louder and louder and louder. When he got to the house, he was saying, Mom, Emazelle is out there right now under Maggie's feet." Mom said, "Son, what on earth are you talking about?" Then he told her what had happened to him. However, that didn't stop him till about 4 years ago. Nat still talks about sister's ghost behind him. This really happened to my brother, Nat Hudson. I was only 6 years old at the time, but I remember it quite well. And that is an end to 2023 Christmas ghost stories. I hope you guys have really enjoyed that. I enjoyed talking to you and telling you these stories. And, I would love for you guys to maybe get this book and read, pick up that old Christmas ghost story tradition again and gather around a light or a candle or a fireplace and just have a quiet, really fun ghost story this year. I hope you guys have a fabulous week. Don't forget, Fun Friday, we've got a new deck to use. I'm so excited. I can't wait for that. And I wish you all well, and I'm so glad you tuned in. Kisses from Kentucky, and I will see you January 1st with the new Alien series. Merry Christmas to everybody, and a Happy New Year, and I will see you on the flip side. I hope you guys have a really special Christmas this year.